I've never experienced any training block as brutally difficult, and I've never experienced such amazing and rapid performance gains. In 2019, I took part in a university study which looked into how different foods influence the speed of recovery from intense training. When I registered for the program, I really didn't understand just how insane the training block would be, and truthfully, I was pretty close to bailing out on several occasions. While this study investigated things like VO2 max, blood lactate, and even cognitive function, this data was not made available to me other than telling me that my starting VO2 max was 59. There is more info on the study design here if you are interested. I'll come back to what the training program looked like in a moment, but I wanted to first share the real-world improvements that I experienced on my bike out on the road. I am tall and I'm relatively heavy, but despite that, I am in my element in the hills and I really love climbing. Shortly after completing this heavy training fortnight, I achieved 2 massive personal bests on some local hill climbs. I am talking about outrageous improvements. I honestly couldn't believe that just 2 weeks of hard training could deliver results like that. Firstly, Greenhill Road. This is a fairly long climb by Adelaide standards. The segment that I ride most frequently is 6.5 kilometres at an average gradient of 6.5%. My best time up this climb prior to the university study was 23 minutes and 4 seconds. And my best power meter figures, either before the study or after the training benefit had worn off, was 307 watts average. 3 weeks after completing that intense training block, I rode the Greenhill segment in 21 minutes even, and power output was 363 watts average. So that is a 2-minute personal best and a power output improvement of around about 50 watts. Secondly is Corkscrew Road. This climb is shorter, much nastier, and often features in the Tour Down Under stage into Campbelltown. The segment I'm looking at is 2.4 kilometres long. Average gradient is 8.2% and it has ramps around 15%. The climb KOM is held by Jay Vine, second is George Bennett, and third is Richie Port. Sorry Jay, we've never met, so I don't have a paparazzi selfie with you yet. My best effort on this Corkscrew segment, either before the study or after the training benefits had worn off, was 10 minutes and 17 seconds with an average of 383 watts. Again, 3 weeks after the harsh training block had concluded, I rode the Corkscrew segment in 9 minutes and 30 seconds with an average power output of 401 watts. So that was a 47-second personal best with an almost 20 watt gain. These are pretty impressive performance gains, I reckon. I should point out also that over the course of that training regime, I lost about 2.5 kilos of body weight, so my power to weight ratio would look even better. What did I need to do to achieve these huge PBs? As I said, the 2-week heavy block of training was horrendous. Prior to starting, the study coordinator told me that the program in front of me was challenging. Midway through the program, when I told him how much I was struggling, he said that only 2/3 of study participants that began the program actually finished it. I'll admit this did motivate me to continue, as I didn't want to be one of the 33% dropouts, but it didn't help relieve the pain. At the end of the training block, he admitted that the targets set were near on impossible to achieve due to the fatigue that your body experiences. You simply cannot reach the target heart rates once your body has entered that state, and my body agreed with him. So here is the heavy training block program. We have 10-minute warm-up in zone 1, then 8.5 minutes in zone 2, defined as just above 69% of max heart rate. For me, this was 128 beats per minute. Then 8 minutes in zone 3, defined as just above 82% of max heart rate. For me, this was 150 beats per minute. Then 7.5 minutes in zone 4, defined as just above 88% of max heart rate. For me, this was 162 beats per minute. And then 3 minutes in zone 5, defined as just above 94% of max heart rate. And for me, that was 174 beats per minute. This heart rate ramp up was performed 4 times in a row. In practice, I did 4 long hill climbs, and the warm-up was actually me soft pedaling down the hill, hoping that my heart rate would drop back into zone 1 before the start of the next effort. Often it didn't. So this 27 minutes of steadily increasing climbing pain was repeated for 4 repetitions, 13 days in a row. So to provide full detail, there was actually 1 week of light training at the start and 2 weeks of light taper at the end of the heavy training block. But you can see by the training plan provided to me that these weeks were really quite easy and far less effort than my normal weekly cycling training would have been. I know that a few of the study participants performed all of the hard rides on an indoor trainer, but honestly, I think that would have left me in a straitjacket, curled up in the corner. The only way I could effectively perform these rides was actually on Greenhill Road, because it's the only road nearby which has a long enough and steady enough gradient to hit the heart rate targets on each effort. The heavy training was physically exhausting, with 2 hours of climbing each day, and mentally excruciating because each day actually got harder and harder as the fatigue set in and the body's ability to recover just disintegrated. Reaching the heart rate targets became impossible for me after day 3, and I was just doing my best to push as hard as I can at the end of each ramping effort. Some days I was struggling to get my heart rate just into zone 4 at the end of each ramp, let alone zone 5, with my heart rate sometimes maxing out at 165 beats per minute. Couldn't go any higher. This was the hardest physical training block I've ever done. For me, the actual research study objective was inconsequential. I believe that the research showed that there was no substantial difference between the group that ate fruit and nuts as a natural antioxidant to recover versus the group that ate oat bars, which was the placebo. I wasn't really interested in that anyway. I wanted to see the training effects. I was stunned at how much extra sustained power I had simply from a 2-week heavy training block. Around 20 watts over a 10-minute climb and around 50 watts over a 20-minute climb. Unfortunately, I don't have access to the other participants' data, so I don't know if they also experienced similar improvements. And even though I know that if I reproduce that same training regime now, I'd likely get a similar boost, the idea of putting my body through all of that again is absolutely daunting. However, if you want a rapid boost to your aerobic power and your FTP, I'm here to tell you that this 2 weeks of gritted teeth on the pain train can produce miracles. This is a brutal program, and it would only be suitable for cyclists with a high level of base fitness already and experience with solid training. I would not want anyone to contemplate this program if they were new to endurance sports or an inexperienced rider due to the huge physical strain on the body, not to mention the emotional roller coaster. In addition, as a physio, I'm always concerned about athletes and sports people taking on sudden increases in training or competition load. Whether it be boot camps, the Festive 500, long multi-day charity rides or bike tours. As the rapid rise in the acute-chronic load ratio is a massive risk factor for injury. I felt constantly on the edge of developing serious knee problems during those 2 heavy weeks, and I think it was just plain luck that my knee irritation didn't get out of hand. It's certainly something to consider if you're going to take on this type of challenge. Overall, I can say that this was an amazing adventure in self-belief and personal discipline. The fitness results were incredible, and I'll always cherish the massive PBs it provided me, which will live on forever on Strava. Ride on.